Good morning, my friends. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. And today is just another day. I'm heading to the shop where I work, CES Motorsport. I get a lot of people that ask me what it's like to daily drive an E92 M3, one that is manual and modified. Now this car doesn't have like a supercharger on it or anything crazy like that. It just has some very mild modifications. If you guys are interested in a full list of that, I have a bunch of videos. I'll link them down below and you guys can find out what's actually done with this car. But it does have coilovers on it. It is lower. It does have aftermarket wheels. It does have summer performance tires. It's not the ideal car that you would think to be daily driving to your work and just to get errands done and things of that nature. I have received comments from people asking what it's actually like to daily drive this car, because I do in fact daily drive my E92 M3 to the office, to the shop, to get things done, to run errands. And on the weekends, I drive my 1M clone. That's like my project car, my weekend car, my fun car. So there are a lot of variables when it comes to driving a car like this, obviously every day in traffic. It's interesting, in the mornings, I'm not the most excited to drive this car sitting in traffic. I think just because it's more busy around here during the mornings. I typically leave the shop like mid-afternoon. I don't really stay the full day. I am technically an independent contractor, so I'm not like someone who has to be there 9 to 5. My schedule's a little bit different. With that being said, I find myself enjoying the drive home from work much more than I do the drive to work. I just find that the traffic and the people who drive in the morning are it's just a little bit crazier on the road. So in my neighborhood, which we are just now exiting, there are a lot of speed bumps and just little things that you have to creep over. And when you have a lowered car like this car, not that this car is absolutely slammed by any means, but it is a little bit lower. You do have to be cognizant of that, and you have to drive slower. I have carbon fiber lip on the front. I have carbon fiber side skirt extensions. Those type of things will all play a role into just being a little bit more aware of your surroundings when you're driving, obviously. That might be something that you don't really think about when you install the modifications or you drive it every now and then, but once you start daily driving a car, these little things will start to creep up on you and just begin to annoy you little by little over time. Now, it's definitely not impossible to daily drive a modified E92 M3. Plenty of people do it. Plenty of people love doing it. But I do find that over time, it doesn't really make like a whole lot of sense. Right now, I'm at the point where I don't want to get rid of this car. I really like this car, but I am looking for something a bit more dailyable, a bit newer, a bit more effortless to drive, like an X3M or maybe even an X4, X5M, something along those lines. I do really enjoy having more cargo space because I am running parts around, I am shipping things for customers, I'm doing all types of things that do require more space in my car. And with this car, that just makes things a little bit more difficult. You know, life is never constant, things always change. And prior to actually working with the guys over at CES, you know, I didn't really have a normal job or like a day gig. I was really just full-time self-employed. And I guess you could say I am still full-time self-employed, being that I am an independent contractor. I don't really have like a specific role at CES Motorsport. I'm just invested in that company, and my job is to just make that company better and help it grow. So that includes many things. I could be a tech one day. You guys might have seen in a recent video, I actually did a crank hub job. Yesterday, I installed a steering wheel for a customer. I could be doing marketing that day. I could be up front answering the phones. If you guys call and look for quotes, you might get me on the phone. I do all types of things at CES Motorsport, and like I said, my role is to just help that company grow. With that being said, these are obvious life changes that just happen, and you can't really predict what life is going to bring you. And before that, I didn't really have to daily drive anything. We also have a Volkswagen Tiguan at our house, but my girlfriend drives that car, so I have been really just driving the E92 M3. And I've got to say, man, I absolutely love this car. Like, it's just one of the last cars that still has that authenticity, that raw feeling when you're driving it. It's just a really, really unique and fun car to own. Obviously with the V8 and the manual, it's like a match made in heaven. But I am getting a little bit older and my priorities are changing a little bit. A car like this is more of like a weekend car. It's more of like a fun back roads car. Is it really the car that you want to be daily driving in traffic all the time? Not really. It's really not the best car for that. And it doesn't really get the best gas mileage. So it's just not one of those cars that would be a good candidate for daily driving. Can you do it? Absolutely, absolutely. And if you're a little bit younger, you're probably going to be a little bit more tolerant to something like this. I don't think it would bother you as much, you know, if you were just going to your class or your job or whatever. I don't think it would bother you as much. But me, I don't know, man. Things have changed. Obviously, I'm a little bit older these days and priorities change. But the thing I do love about driving this car every day is that I get to drive this car every day, you know? So there are two sides to the coin. Having a car that's much more authentic and raw feeling also comes with the things that aren't as comfortable when you're daily driving the car. This car with the Öhlins Road and Track setup on it, the wheels, everything, it's pretty raw. It's not the most comfortable car to be driving on the roads, city roads, every single day. I did recently remove my Turner Motorsport front lower adjustable monoball control arms because they were just overkill. They made the car extremely stiff. So I actually went back, I just bought a brand new set of front lower OEM control arms, which actually helped out quite a bit. The way that I had this car set up before was just a bit much for what it needs to be, like a street car, you know. I was putting a lot of like club sport style modifications on this car that really just didn't need to be on the car for a daily driven street car. So I find myself sometimes backpedaling with some of the modifications that I'm doing, but that's okay. A lot of the things that I've put onto this car that I'm not going to be keeping on this car are actually going to be going onto my 1M clone, which is actually my project car, which makes a hell of a lot more sense than throwing, you know, really like crazy suspension modifications and monoball bushings on a car like this. They fit and suit that car much better. So I sort of find myself in this position now with this car where I just want to return it to a very comfortable OEM spec E92 M3. I am looking for an X3M, X4M, X5M. I'm not decided on which one I want. I just know that I want to get into an X series BMW, preferably a newer one, and preferably one that has an S58 X3M. I think that that would be a really fun car to own. Not that it would be like a total content machine for me on YouTube. I really don't even look at YouTube like that anymore. I sort of just make videos whenever I want to, not videos that I feel like have to be pumped out for people. The climate on YouTube has changed drastically over the years, especially for me, and I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm just making videos when I want to. I no longer really treat YouTube like a job because I think that that sort of stripped a lot of the fun away from me personally as a creator. And I find myself enjoying making videos much more when I'm just making them because I want to make them, rather than feeling like I'm forced to make them. A lot of times when I get into these really, really in-depth builds, it takes a lot of money, a lot of resources, and a lot of time, and it is a full-time job. We just opened up the valves, and this is one of the better parts about owning this car. The V8, because it sounds freaking awesome. So when I get to get onto the freeways or on-ramps or anything of that nature and give it a little bit, that's the part of the daily driving the E92 M3 that I love. But again, it's traffic, man. It's early morning, Charlotte, North Carolina. Everyone's on their way to work. It's just a different, it's a different animal when you're daily driving in an E92 M3 that's manual. But I'm not complaining, man. I'm blessed. The fact that I even get to own this car and daily drive this car is a pretty cool thing. And I am super fortunate to have both of the cars that I have in my garage. They're some of my favorite cars. But yeah, I think that if you're in the market for an E92 M3 and it's going to be your only car, I don't know, I would probably consider going for a DCT, and I would probably consider going for an E90. But I also think, you know, this largely comes down to your lifestyle and your age. Like someone like me, I'm a little bit older, I have a much different lifestyle than some younger people, and my priorities are obviously going to be different. I think that if it was me 10 years ago, I would have been like E92 M3, slam it, wheels, like yada yada, I'll daily drive it, I don't care. you just change as you get older, and you don't have the patience for that as much anymore, to be in it Monday through Friday, you know, all day in traffic. So I do find myself kind of chilling out a little bit, pulling back a little more on the cars that I'm taking to work every day. The thing is, I know that, you know, if I bought an X3M, I would still modify it to a certain extent, but that car just inherently would be easier to drive every day, obviously. I guess a big part of this conversation also comes down to, like, where do you live? Is it a very congested city? Like, Charlotte is becoming a very, very popular place to live. There are tons and tons of people here. Not to mention, we don't really have a winter, so you can daily drive a car here, but the traffic is getting insane. Luckily for me, I don't live in Charlotte proper. I don't live downtown. We live like 6 miles outside of the city, and the shop is further away from the city, so I don't really have to deal with like a ton of traffic. If I worked in the city, there would be no way. Like, this would just not be possible for me. I would not be able to daily drive this car. I would just hate it, and I would have to go get a different daily or something like that. The question I'm faced with now is, like, am I going to keep this car after I buy an X3M? The 1 Series is never going to go anywhere. Like, that's my project car. I've had to do so much work to that car to get it to the point. I have so much more work to do to it. That's kind of like the show pony that I take out to all the shows and like have fun with and build up and make cool horsepower, just content machine. But this car has just always kind of been like my point A to B car, and now that things are sort of changing in my life, I sort of want to change this car up. The bummer part of it is because it is such a special car, and it is so cool to me, and I've wanted one for so long that I don't really want to get rid of it. But at the same time, you know, I bought this car about a year ago, and I got it for a really good price, and I really brought the thing back to life. It's in fantastic condition. All of the big maintenance items have been done. It's flawless. I daily drive the car and it has no issues. And this car would probably bring some decent money, you know? But I'm a bit undecided. I think that right now, sort of just putting some of the factory parts back into the car that I feel like makes sense for more of like a daily driven car. And from that point on, then I'll figure out really what I want to do. I am actively looking for an X Series BMW, just trying to figure out which one makes the most sense for me, driving as many as possible. But I will say I'm heavily leaning towards the X3M. I think that that's just going to be the car, man. That is just a monster of a vehicle, and yeah, so that'll probably end up being the car. But can you daily drive an E92 M3? Absolutely. Like, anyone could daily drive an E92 M3. There's no reason that you shouldn't be able to daily drive an E92 M3. The one thing that I will say is that you need to take care of your maintenance. Like any of these cars, the people who say that these cars are unreliable, they don't last, they're in terrible condition all the time, they don't do preventative maintenance. I bought this car and I handled all the maintenance right away. Probably spent close to $5 grand only on maintenance, just getting things taken care of. Doing my rod bearings, throttle actuators, different bushings, motor mounts, all of the things that you should be taking care of if you want a car to actually last. And if you do that, then you don't really have to worry about it. You can just like enjoy the car. Because those are going to be things that you are going to need to replace, especially on a 96,000 mile 2008 M3, you know? So for me, the experience has been really good because I did all of the right things up front. For a lot of other people, if you're just, you know, a younger college kid who's just trying to buy this car and like that's really all of the money that you have, I feel like the ownership experience, unless you're getting like a really, really good example of one, is not gonna be that great because you're gonna run into a lot of the issues that people have with these cars and these V8s, and they're just not cheap to maintain. Like, these cars are pretty expensive to take care of as far as like maintenance is concerned, especially when it comes to tracking these cars. Like, they are not cheap to track because there's just so much stuff that needs to be addressed. But yeah, I think that at the end of the day, like, it's just going to come down to lifestyle and, you know, what you're really looking for, what's important to you. And right now for me, this isn't really the car that I want to be daily driving. Could I? Absolutely. Like, it's definitely manageable, but I am definitely leaning more towards still fun. It's still really fun to drive. I'm definitely leaning more towards getting like an X series or even like a 5 series or something like that. I don't know, I'm kind of all over the board right now with what I want. But I do want something that's just easier, has some newer tech, a little bit newer car. I haven't had like a newer car in a very long time. I think the last new-ish car I had was my Supra, which was a few years back. And there's definitely things within newer cars that you can appreciate, even if you're someone like me that really likes like the older, like raw feeling cars, which is all about the driving. There are definitely things that I enjoy about newer cars. You know, I even thought about at one point getting like the new G87 as a daily driver, but then again I felt like I would probably go down that road of modifying it and doing all these things, and it would just end up becoming another project. So sometimes you gotta buy the car that you know won't tempt you to just make it a project car, and I think that the X series would be like a good mix between a car that I could have some fun with and do some modifications, but it would never become this car that I need to like worry about driving on the street because, you know, it's modified or whatever. But we are pulling up to the shop now, and hopefully you guys got some value out of this video. I appreciate you guys for coming along and hanging out with me this morning for my morning commute. We'll try to do more videos like this where I just kind of throw the camera in the car and we can hang out and chat about stuff. If you have any questions for me, leave them down in the comments, but I will see you guys in the next video.